Hello, hello. So, today I want to talk about change. You know, and coming off the back of the self-love challenge, I think it's an appropriate time. I mean, it's always an appropriate time, right? But so most of us have been living in this, like, I call it the self-hate epidemic. You know, we've been trained to be unkind and critical and judgmental and like not listen to our emotions and to lie to ourselves, essentially, so how do we get out of that self-hate and come into self-love? And when I say self-hate, it's like not even that apparent that you hate yourself. You may not feel like you hate yourself, but the way that we treat ourselves sometimes, if you were looking at it from the outside looking in, you would, that's the way that you would treat somebody that you hate, right? So it's not even about self-hate. It's more like a self-sacrifice. Like you put others in front of yourself. Not to say like you're always first and you're the center of the universe or anything like that. But whenever we're constantly giving, constantly caving and not listening to ourselves and just going with the flow, like it's not it's not love anyway. So going from this thing that's not love to self-love, there's going to be a lot of changes. And like just the kindness aspect for me, once I realized, how I was being super critical, super judgmental of myself and speaking to myself in a way that I would never speak to anybody. Like not even the people that I hate would I say the stuff I was saying to myself. So whenever I think about that time, 2020 and before that, before I got into therapy the first time, there's going to be a shift. There's going to be a change. And this is the thing that I've been thinking about for like the last 3 days. And it's still formulating in my mind. So there may be more videos about this. But it took me about a year to become, once I was aware of the way I was speaking to myself. And then I would throw up my stop sign, and say, hey, is this true? And what else could be true? And, like after I called myself an idiot or a piece of crap or whatever. It took about a year before I realized that I wasn't that way anymore. Many stop signs got thrown up. There was probably 0.6, 7, 8 months in where I'm like, oh, I thought we weren't doing this anymore, but yet here it still is, So the change happens slowly over time. Sometimes change happens pretty quick, but the thing about change is, it's not easy. Yet, so we're humans, and we're animals too, and we're part of this, nature, and nature is always evolving or changing, right? So sometimes as humans, we get stuck in this I am who I am and you can take it or leave it sort of mentality. We can get stuck in a victim mentality. We can get comfortable where we're at. And even though it's not fulfilling us, because it's comfortable, we don't want to leave it, right? There's so many different aspects to this. But and then there's whenever you do change, the people around you, they may not like it. And for many reasons, right? There could be that they were taking advantage of you and now they can't anymore. No wonder why they wouldn't like that, It could just be that that was the person that they knew and you're growing and evolving and you're not that person anymore. And so they don't vibe with that. And that's completely okay too. If you imagine your friend that changes quite a bit and they're not really the same and you don't really have a lot in common anymore, it's not like they it's not like a bad intention, you know, it's just like a growing apart sort of thing. That can still be painful, you know, but there's all these different aspects to why. And that's what I ran into at the beginning of my journey, was as I was changing, like it being reflected back at me that it was like a bad thing, you know? And a lot of times people will reflect that back to you because they too know that they need to change, but they can't, or they won't. They don't want to. And so they're projecting that onto you. They're jealous, you know? So there's a lot of different reasons why we stay stuck, right? In addition to it just being a habit, like whenever I was calling myself bad names, it was just kind of habitual. It was just the way I was, you know, and it took a lot of energy to stop that and turn it around. And it's going to be that way for anything that we change, because, you know, once you get going in the momentum of doing things a certain way, if you want to do it a different way, you're going to have to slow that roll down before going in the other way. So that's the thing about change, is that we are humans and part of nature. And so we are evolving. That's like the whole thing. We're supposed to be here to learn and grow and evolve. Yet somehow so many of us get stuck not wanting to change, you know, just completely happy with all the crap. And I think, you know, if we're being honest, like at any point in your life, is it perfect and you have nothing else to learn, nowhere to go? Like, if you say, yeah, like everything is just fine and I have nothing else to learn, nowhere to grow, like, I don't think that is a thing. Yet so many people, especially ones stuck in this victim mindset, which I have been in, like everything is happening to me, woe is me, why is my life this way, why is this bad luck, whatever, you know. The thing about that is it's not going to change until you change. Like, be the change you wish to see in the world, you know. That's one of my favorite quotes. And yet change remains so difficult for so many reasons. So there is this like inherent difficulty with it, because it's like our ego wants to keep us safe. And safe and the unknown, which whenever we're changing, we're going into the unknown. They aren't like, when you're going to the unknown, there's going to be resistance. There's going to be fear, because you don't know. That's just the way it is. Your ego says not safe. Yet your soul wants to grow, wants to change, wants to learn. So you have this internal battle with change. And I think that's where anxiety comes in. Because sometimes we can be anxious with change. You could also be excited for change. And with that, it's the story that you're telling yourself. Like, I'm going into this unknown thing. It'll be anxiety if you attach a negative story, a negative outcome to it. And it'll be excitement if you attach a positive story and outcome to it. So that's one trick for the internal battle, is that what story are you telling yourself? What story is playing in your head about this change? And I think initially and automatically our ego is like, no, it's not going to be safe. It's going to be a terrible outcome. We see all the bad things that are going to happen. And a lot of the times we just roll with that. And that's why we kind of stay stuck. So there's this internal, without, like, even if there was nobody else around, there's already this kind of like tug of war going on between our ego and our soul about changing. Like, you know, deep down in your heart and your soul and your gut, you want to do this thing, you want to be different in this way, yet your ego is like, but this is familiar. We know this. We're comfortable here. Why would we change, you know? So that can keep you limited. And then there's external variables too. Like, if I change, will I still have friends? You know, will my kids still like me? Will I still have a job? All of these things can be very scary too. And like society, it really like glorifies loyalty, consistency. So like when you start showing up as somebody who doesn't beat yourself up, you don't lie to yourself, you listen to your emotions and like not let them take the wheel, but they do help you make your decisions, and your decisions may be different once you start listening to your emotions, once you start saying no, once you stop over giving, going from a people pleaser to a sovereign being. Like, it's going to be messy. There are people that are going to drop off. Like, I also remember, like, at the very beginning of this self-love thing, one of my family members got online onto another one of my family members' posts and said that I blame all of my troubles on my parents. And so, like, that hurt, you know? I was already, like, iffy whether or not I wanted this person in my life. And that was, like, the thing that sealed the deal. But it still hurts. Like, I still want this relationship. But I also know that it's no longer good for me, you know? So it's like you have to learn to love people without trying to change them, without trying to explain your side, without contacting. And I still think about it many years later. I still feel guilty sometimes. And, you know, it's just interesting that that is one of the drivers that was keeping me locked in this familiarity of toxic patterns and, you know, the family system that I grew up in, which wasn't all bad, but there are things that did happen that I speak about that some people don't like. But that's me being true, you know, true to myself and expressing my feelings, expressing my thoughts. And it's just interesting because that is something that keeps us chained, right? And not changing. So we did talk about in the challenge about, you know, when we feel stuck, excuse me. And sometimes we feel stuck because we need to change, but we're not. Kind of like the car that got stuck in the dirt, that keeps spinning its wheels. And then, you know, society will tell you, push harder, want it more. You know, you're not trying hard enough. So you push that gas pedal down and you just want it so bad, but the car just gets deeper in. So many times when we're feeling stuck, it's not about trying harder the same direction. It's about shifting into a new direction, like putting a board under it or getting someone to help you pull out, right? And that's the thing. That's the thing. We got to do something different. We can't keep pushing harder. We've got to slow down and figure out a different way. Try something new. But whenever we do that, it's scary. Like, what if that doesn't work? What if this happens, you know? And I get that. I get that. And this is where faith comes in. And like belief in yourself. Like whenever you are doing this thing that's different, it may be uncomfortable at first. It may be unfamiliar. But having faith in yourself, your ability to listen to yourself, be honest with yourself, and know that, hey, this is not going to go down the same way because I'm not the same person. faith in your ability to get yourself out of a situation if you need to, because you're listening to yourself. That was something that I struggled with, was like, well, if I've been doing it wrong this whole time, you know, how do I know that this isn't the wrong way too? And it wasn't a huge leap of faith. And yeah, I don't know. You know, I don't know. I know I feel a lot better. I know that, like, everything around me is a lot better than what it was. But at the end of the day, who knows anything really, right? So, yeah. So this is why change is hard. Because there's all sorts of things telling you not to. Internally, your ego, your familiarity, your habits, like the momentum that you have going a certain way, that's all trying to hold you back. And then you have these external things, like the relationships that you have. If you are changing, which, I mean, we all should be, but a lot of people are stuck. A lot of people are stuck. And a lot of people are stuck in this lying to themselves, not listening to themselves, and being really unkind to themselves, the self-hate epidemic. So whenever you get out of that, there's going to be resistance. There's going to be jealousy. There's going to be projections onto you. So really being able to come back into yourself and know what you're doing and why you're doing it, and knowing that, you know, whether they're jealous, whether they're projecting, whatever it is, that's them and not you. So maybe boundaries will be the next thing that we talk about, because that's what that is knowing where you end and they start. And they're allowed to have their feelings about it, you know? But that doesn't mean that you don't have to change. That doesn't mean that you have to stay in the self-hate, misery loves company, pity party, which can be very alluring, even though it doesn't sound that way. You know, because it's familiar, it's comfortable, it's what we've known. So, yeah, I just really wanted to talk about changing today, because I know in my life personally, and it's a lot of like old dogs and new tricks sort of thing, but like some of like my parents' age people are like, I am who I am and take it or leave it. And they got a lot of toxic shit going on. And it's like, you know, you can see it from the outside looking in that they do it to themselves. You know, complaining about a job always, constantly, but never going out to like find something else, you know? Looking for handouts all the time and like, oh, my luck is so terrible. And it's like, well, if you just changed your outlook a little bit, but they are who they are and you take it or leave it. So sometimes it's like you still love them, but you can't sit with that anymore because you see it so clearly. And that's another change. I think that's the main one that hurts the worst too, is like having to accept people in the self-hate epidemic, knowing that there's a better way, but also knowing how difficult it is to change. It's so funny. It's so interesting. You know, it takes time, it takes energy, and a lot of people put a lot of time and energy into the miserable pity party, and then therefore there is no energy to turn that around. And that's okay. That's their path. And it can be difficult to watch, especially if you love these people. But we can't change them. We can't. All we can change is ourselves. So pulling that energy back into us, why we're doing what we're doing, and then creating distance if you need to. Understanding that some people aren't going to understand you. And that's okay, because you are getting a deeper, more understanding relationship with yourself. And really that's all you need. of course, it's nice to have people that you love still love you. And that, I will say that too. The people that fell away, I knew were going to. And I still have like a majority of my people. So most of your people aren't going to care, and they might even jump on board with you, or they're even on the board already with you. They just don't talk about it. That's what happened with my best friend. Like, you know, I was scared to talk to her about what was going on with me. And then as I did, she was really going through the same shit. So it was like, oh, cool, you know? But that's the hard part, is the people, the relationships that you thought you needed. And it's not that you stop loving them. You don't. But you do love yourself enough to know that's them and this is me and this is what I'm doing, and they can do what they want to do. You accept what they're doing, and whether or not they accept what you're doing, that's up to them, and they may fall away, and that hurts. And that's why I think many of us stay stuck. But yeah, change. We're humans. We're supposed to be changing. So anytime somebody guilts you for changing, especially for the better, like, it makes you wonder. And that's okay. They're allowed to. Maybe you're sparking this light up in them, and then they're going to also start listening to themselves and being honest with themselves and being kind to themselves. And if you hadn't have changed, then they would have never changed. You know, sometimes it works like that too. But yeah, change is hard. It's not only hard to just do it, it's hard to stay in it. It's hard initially to do it because your ego and your ego is trying to keep you safe and in the familiar, and you've got your habits already going. And then it's hard to keep it going because once you get that momentum, then you got external people, places, and things telling you, no, this isn't who you are. You were like this. And then you start feeling bad. Like, I remember standing out here and like knowing that I needed to change my life, knowing that I wanted to get on here and do these videos. And Erin Doughty was like, every moment you get to be a new you. Every moment you get to be new you. And it's funny because that same family member used to make comments about me showing up with different personalities, which, you know, maybe I do have whatever, multiple personalities. I don't think I do. I think I'm just a Gemini, but my personality changes a lot around her anyway. But, so I had this like resistance, like I felt like I needed to show up the same everywhere I go, you know? Always be in a good mood, always be happy, always be da-da-da, you know, whatever it is. But that's not how we are. We have different moods. There are different seasons. Like, every second you get a chance to be a new you. And you can decide every single second, what do you want to be now? What do you want to be now? I didn't like that, so I'm going to do this. I didn't like that, I'm going to do this. It's your life. And anybody who's saying something about it, like, that's them. What do you want? And give yourself permission. Like, that was the hardest part for me, was like allowing myself to think differently, to choose different things, because I thought I had to stay this way that I was, you know, because that's who I am. And but who we actually are isn't any title, isn't a certain mood, you know. We're very up and down and all around, and I believe we all are. It's just some of us ignore that, and you know, I know that I did. So yeah, that was very difficult, to allow myself to just be however I am. Like, if I'm in a bad mood, I'm allowed to be in a bad mood. Doesn't mean I need to take it out on anybody or, like, you know, do something dangerous or hurtful, but I'm allowed to be in that mood. I'm allowed to be more quiet or closed off sometimes, you know. And then if 10 minutes from then the bad mood has went away and I'm like happy and whatever, like, that's okay. And So yeah, change. What is it that you're working on changing right now? What is it that you want to be? Like, oh, we could go on and on about this, but that's all I'll say for today. Bye.